So for those of you who have been here before, you know who I am. My name is Grant Harrison from Nextra Consulting. For those of you who have never been here before, who don't know who I am, my name is Grant Harrison, still the same person. So I'm from Nextra Consulting. We do consulting for landscape contractors, help them with their businesses. And then the one big thing we love to do is education. So I'm pleased to be here to be part of this 5-part series with the Waterloo chapter. And tonight we're going to talk about leadership. So that's kind of why I'm qualified to be up here. I'd like to thank the board for allowing me to come here and try this. Just the online and the recording seems to be really, really strong. So it's good. But as a speaker, it's always nice to have people in the room. So that's why we want to get a little more interactive tonight. So the other thing we want to do is next month, actually, we're not doing corporate finance management next month. It's risk law and something else next month. I was going to move the corporate finance up, but we're going to keep that until September, I think. So lots of topics still to come. So from those of you who've been with us before, last time we met was in December, and we talked about sales and marketing. So I left you with homework. So again, we're going to go through it. So for those of you who are with us, maybe online, or you were here with us, what changes have you made in your business from things that you learned from the marketing session? And again, people are online? People are online? Yes? We have guys online, Josh? Sorry. One? Okay. So what we want to do, again, for those of you who are first joining us, there's people online, so you have to grab a mic. We have a handheld mic for you. So I think Trevor is going to be our mic runner tonight. And so just before you start talking, make sure you have the mic so the people online can hear your questions. So who wants to start us off with what they've done in the last, I guess, 60 days, really, around the sales and marketing within their business? So what did you learn from the last time we were together? Yep. Trevor, right at your table there. Oh, I might have to turn it on.
Hello?
There you go, right there. Yep.
So we developed a marketing plan that we've put in place now for 4 of our different staff members that are doing like our social media marketing, our like any like flyers and things that we're creating. So it's all coming from like one sort of theme now.
Okay.
So.
Good. All right, perfect. And that's something you took from the last time we were together then? Oh, good. That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's good. It just, it takes the time to be able to think about that. So anyone else? Anyone else do a CDAP application? You went to Chick-fil-A. Yes. How was the Chick-fil-A experience? Was it good? Was it worth it? Yes? Okay. What time of day did you go? Like lunchtime? Okay. Yeah, Chick-fil-A does an amazing job. For those who wasn't really part of the sales and marketing one, but a great example of just how to think outside the box. So thank you for the Chick-fil-A example. Yeah, I know I did. Go to the Chick-fil-A. Someone listening, actually, it's a speaker. That feels good. So anyone else? Yep, Trevor? I don't think it's on. Yeah, we'll just leave it on.
Hello? Yeah. So we did the CDAP application. So they're writing the proposal for us as we speak.
Yep, awesome. Yeah, it's free money, right? To be able to do that. So great program. Anyone else want to share things they did this last 60 days since we met last on marketing? No? Yes? Perfect.
We actually, Linda and I met with a marketing company to start discussing the possibilities of what we can do for advertising and what they can offer us and how we can expand for next year, not so much this year for the salt yard, but it was a great experience to sit and talk and then for them to actually learn who we are in person and see what we do versus just hearing about it through a phone call.
Yeah, good. I think that's the great thing. A good marketing company should ask you a lot of questions, right? And if they can come to you, that's even better. So that's all. That's great. Good marketing company. Anyone else? Yep. Hold on one sec. We'll just get the Chick-fil-A comment. I'm okay if
okay.
Here,
We're putting together a customer engagement survey form. So
okay, that's a good one. That's awesome. Good. Okay, so leadership and corporate citizenship is the topic for tonight that we're going to cover. Again, this is in a series of the CLP exam books. Okay, so learning objectives tonight are these. So I put these up on the screen before, they were kind of circling through. So what we're going to talk about today is understanding fundamental theories of principles of leadership and motivation. That's a big word too. We're going to help you with your leadership. We're going to understand management roles and responsibilities that you have, how to deal with conflict. This is a good one because we deal with this as a consultant all the time. Setting clear and realistic goals, effective communication, how to run an effective meeting, and how to deal with change management. Okay, so I'm going to let you guys go for another 10 minutes, maybe 5, depending on what it is. At your table, I would like you to, I'm going to leave these on the screen, and on your table, what I'd like you to do is come up with 1 or 2 things you'd like to learn tonight based on one of these topics. So this could be a pain point within your business that you're like, I would really like the answer to this particular thing that has to do something close to this, okay? And then what I will do is I will hopefully make sure as a facilitator somewhere along the way to make sure I cover that specific topic. But there might be, the better thing though, is that someone at your table might have an answer for you as well. So this is the whole thing. If you have a problem, share it with someone. Hopefully the peer-to-peer network can help out a little bit. So it's 6:15 right now. Let's say I'll check back in 10 minutes. And then just hopefully 1 or 2 people from each table can share a little bit something they're hoping to get out of tonight. But yeah, please share at your table things you're hoping to learn tonight around the learning objectives. Okay, perfect. Okay, so before we kind of take some answers up and share what's happening at your table, we have some local announcements for what's going on. So,
thank you. Guys, just a quick minute to touch on the Home and Garden show. We're going to have a fairly large booth. One of the things we're doing is setting up a TV, and we're going to outline people's work. So what we're asking is, I'm going to pass these out. Make sure I talk in here. I'm going to pass this out. If you have work to highlight your company's work or something along those lines for you, if there's some stuff you'd like people at the home show to be aware of, it's a great opportunity to send some pictures, again, that outline your work or whatever cool opportunities it is. Send it to Missy. It'll be an email. That's quite simple. If there's any questions, go ahead, Jay. If I said yes, is it going to convince you? Because part 2, I'll leave that alone. If there's any questions on that, again, Missy's email is on the piece of paper. Great chance to outline your company's work. The other thing right here, I'll come over to Jay on this. Just for sign up, there are booth times that you can talk to people in general, or just spend some time at the booth. We need people to help make popcorn, to answer questions, talk about your company, advertise yourself if you'd like. So what you're committing to is, if you're at a booth, you're going to answer questions. We're trying to encourage people to work with Landscape Ontario companies. That is the point of our presence there, is we want to join Landscape Ontario and use companies that we work with. So with that said, you want to be prepared to answer questions about industry related stuff, who to use for hardscaping, who to use for maintenance, give you some direction, answer some questions for you.
What's our theme this year?
Our theme is to why work with a landscape professional from Landscape Ontario.
Yeah, but we're doing trees, right?
Oh, so what we're gonna plant and grow with LO. There's the hashtag. And so plant, everybody can say it together. Plant and grow with LO. We could have a little jingle to that if somebody wants to go ahead with that. But yeah, so the idea is, 1 more minute here. The idea is we're gonna plant little trees. We're gonna have one of the compact sod yard units there, cubic yards, and so the kids can actually get interactive. They can come and plant a suckling in a little pot. We've got a lot of sponsorship for getting all this stuff together as far as putting it in, so kids can come and plant a little tree. We'll give directions on when to plant it in the ground. It just gets some kids interactive. Some families might want to join, and on the other side of the booth, that'll be where there's a TV set up to highlight work from LO members.
So if you want to volunteer, like that will all be taught to you before you actually dropped into that. It's a fun way to interact with the community. You do a little bit of self-promotion, but we're trying to hear is promote LO. If they ask you specifically what you do, if they ask you specifically what you do, I mean, you can say that, but typically what we're doing at the Home and Garden Show is to promote Landscape Ontario. And like Brandon said, that we're going to be planting trees this year. Should be interesting. A lot of community involvement. I've been doing this a number of years myself. And people talk about these little trees and saplings that they planted 10 years ago, and it's this high now, and oh my God, and you know, you should see it. And then, so we want to incorporate that also with an Instagram marketing campaign.
So does that include right plant, right place, and planted right? Like right tree?
Those will be things that we can address. We're gonna have a little write-up on how to make sure that they, I mean, have the best chance at growing. Because we obviously,
Like, don't plant them under a hydro wire.
that's a good point.
Like next to the concrete, like a foot away.
We'll get you involved to help for instructions. How's that? 'Cause- So again, back to this, Home and Garden Show setup and build volunteers. I'm gonna start at this table. You can start. Guys, so just real quick, one more last second here. Guys, there's 2 sheets. One sheet is setup. It's basically building the booth. I've got some stone set up. Jeanette's helped. We talked about that today. We've got 200 square feet of stone to lay, which will be quick. Getting just all this stuff set up in the booth. This date is between the 18th and 21st at the Kitchener Audit. All depends on what events are happening that night, whether it's Rangers games, we'll find that out. So if you want to help set up, that's great. Otherwise, here's another sign up for specific times if you want to stand in the booth. Again, get your face in front of some people, advertise yourself, certainly focus on LO and go from there. The dates are Friday, the 22nd of March until Sunday, the 24th. And there's different. Don't think so. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. Thanks for the time. Any questions? See myself, Misty would be a good first. Go ahead. That's it.
Perfect. Okay, Trevor, are you okay to run the mic for me? Okay, so back to this fun learning objectives. Who wants to share a pain point, something you've learned, something you're hoping to learn tonight that we could talk about, or just something you've learned at the table? You just left the mic if you knew you were gonna do that. So okay.
Okay, so we had a common situation with a few people. I'll just give you a quick scenario. You got an A player or a bunch of A players, but you have a B player on the team. How do you deal with a B player that's now bringing down the culture because they don't care? So when you want to surround yourself with A players, how do you, what is the best from experiences managing that? I mean, do you let them go? That's the hard part. You don't want to, but how do you redirect somebody whose attitude is bringing down the culture?
Okay, we're going to talk about that tonight for sure. We're definitely covering that one. Who else wants to share?
We were just talking about handoff of a job and just kind of people staying in their own lanes and not overlapping job positions.
That's a good one. Yeah, we can fit that one in there. So over here.
Hi. So we kind of talked about 2 things, maybe one can kind of get more insight from you. The other thing kind of got some answers here at the table. Just dealing with difficult situations and anxiety with field staff and how to properly kind of train them and teach them the ways to be able to handle themselves. So kind of just by having those proper roles and responsibilities laid out so that each team knows if they need to pass along, oh, I'm sorry, I can't answer that question for you, but I can pass it off to them and they'll be able to answer it. And just dealing with that. Something else too that I think someone else brought up, conflict with field staff and how to deal with that.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, we're going to talk about conflict management and how to deal with that. So, okay. Who else? Anyone else want to share before we jump into the content? Yep.
we didn't really discuss this as a group, but the change management portion, our company's sort of at that 20-year cycle, and we're looking at, the next steps and organizing how that change is going to look and how we can get the staff to get on board with that.
To buy into that. Okay. Yep. And that's the last one. We're going to talk about change management, right? So good. That's a good one. Lots of scenarios there. Anyone else before we jump into the content? Goal setting. Okay. Something particular around goal setting.
The big one was keeping each other accountable.
Yep.
And especially when you are the lead, how do you find someone to keep you accountable?
Mm-hmm. Hire a consultant, someone can hold you accountable. We've made a business model around holding people accountable. Yeah.
Martin's still one of the best managers I've ever had.
Yeah. Oh, good shout out to Martin. Wow, that's amazing. All right, it's a good one, and a lot of owners struggle with that, and we can definitely talk about that as well. So, and I need that too in my own business. I need that accountability as well, and I have that built into my own business. I have an accountability partner or someone that holds me accountable and be like, "Hey, Grant, what are you doing? Like, you're off track here. You don't seem to be so focused." We've had to make some major changes in our business over the last couple of months, and all those were for someone who was outside of my organization, challenging me on my thoughts and processes and what I was thinking was doing. So that's really important. Okay, good. So I didn't put this in the presentation because I actually just heard it today, but I thought this would have been the title I should have used today, but I didn't. So leadership, this is what the book definition of leadership is. So it says, management is the process of achieving organizational goals by planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So the definition I heard today of leadership or management, depending on what you want to do, how you want to say it, is leadership or / management is disappointing your own people at the rate they can absorb it. Absorb it. My struggle in my leadership ability is that I'm about, like, when I want to have I don't struggle with difficult conversations, but I probably push too much on people and they can't absorb it too much. So there's a fine line there, like to sit down and have our conversation, be like, I think that I should go this far with you, but if I go too far, I could break you, or I could make you leave, or I could crush you. Okay, that's my struggle. The other side of it, though, is if you're conflict averse, you're on the other side of that. You're sitting there saying, well, I don't want to say anything because it might offend them. It might do something. They might not like me. So it's finding that pendulum. It's finding that spot in the middle there. And each person is individual, right? You can come to me and you can tell me exactly how you feel about me. Martin has done this to me. Martin sat me down a year ago and he's like, Grant, you're a seagull. I'm like, I'm a seagull. He's like, yeah, you fly in, shit on all of us and leave. Right? I'm like, good, okay. So that doesn't feel good at the very beginning, but he was right? He said to me, Grant, this is what you're doing in our organization. And he was 100% right. Did I like to hear that? No, but I want people to be direct with me. I didn't want Martin to beat around the bush and be like, you know what? Sometimes you're not so nice. Sometimes I just want to be told I'm a seagull, right? And it worked out well, didn't it, right? So but that's what I needed at the time in my own leadership ability to be able to do that. So again, I'm going to read it again for you. Leadership / management is disappointing your own people, our staff members, at the rate they can absorb it. Thoughts on that? That's going to be the next title I'm going to make for a book. If I'm ever going to write a book, it will be that. So, okay, let's keep going. So the role of a manager. Majority of you, I'm assuming, because you're sitting in the room, you're managing someone, something, some people. So the whole role of a manager is to make sure that we're planning, we're organizing, we're leading, and we're controlling. Okay, so that looks like in our day-to-day operations, most of us thrive in this area. So like, what are the crews doing today? If there's a problem, how do we solve the problem? We typically are sitting in the room, and we're typically very good at what we do, is because we're very good at putting out fires. If you're not good at putting out fires within our industry, you're probably not going to stay in a management role very quickly, because it's going to snow today. It's not going to snow today. It's going to rain today. It's not going to rain today. We haven't had snow in seems like all season, right? So it's all those things that we're trying to deal with that have to go back to how do we plan for this? How do we organize our teams? How do we lead in that? And then how do we control everything going together? One of my friends that I know really well, he runs a manufacturing business. And he looks at our business and goes, I just don't understand how you can control all that. He's like, I have a hard time controlling everyone that's in a building envelope when I can see them everywhere. You guys have all your staff leave every day, go in a million different directions, and you're trying to lead them, trying to do quality control. He's like, it is tough. We have picked a hard industry to manage and to lead in. So, but it's one of those things where if you grew up in the industry, you really don't know any different. But it's really hard to do that. So, effective leadership is managerial positions. What is this? I can't even. What's this word that my picture is blocking? Sorry. Oh, means being a motivator for employees. Thank you. So again, motivating employees is the probably since COVID, motivating employees is probably the number one thing that we're trying to do. If you ask Martin and I 10 years ago, we didn't really have to motivate people like we do today. It seems like all we're doing is babysitting, motivating people today. Especially with the mental health that's going on right now. That's a huge thing for us as managers, right? And how do you deal with that? Especially if you've never had to deal with mental health personally, it's very hard to understand what's happening in that person's life because you just don't understand, right? It takes a lot of empathy to be able to do that. So you're motivating that person that's not feeling well mentally or doesn't understand what's going on in their life or how they feel or all that type of stuff. And that's real things that are happening at a higher percent than we really wanted to admit to. But how effective leaders do that well, right? And again, it doesn't mean you can't be frustrated with it. It doesn't mean that you know exactly what you're doing, but it means that you need to work through that. And that learning curve for people right now is just skyrocketed. I think next year, my guess is next year, we're going to have more mental health. You're going to have more people leave this year on mental health leave than we did last year, unfortunately. Right? It's not getting any better. So I wish it was. I wish it was there. Who went to the Jackie Hart peer-to-peer in January at Congress? Anyone here? Yes, did you go? No, not this year. So Jackie did a great peer-to-peer network all on mental health. Jim Palouche was there. He did a great talk. I wasn't able to be there, but I heard tons of people about it. It was really, really well done. And Jim Palouche is a landscape industry consultant that he shared his story, how he struggled with mental health. And it was amazing because I have been to a couple of Jim's events as a participant. And Jim was one of those guys that was like always on a high, like you just wanted to be him. And then he would say later, afterwards, he wrote a book about this. He would go back to his hotel room and just crash. And like, I'm not good enough. I couldn't do it. I don't want to go out. Like even to the point he tried to commit suicide and he failed. But he's able to write a story, come back and share that story with people. But there's a person on the outside, you would never know that, right? Like I always looked up to him, but he's amazing that he shared his story. So to be able to do that. But again, as our role is again, everyone's different. So how you treat one staff member is not the same way you're going to treat the other staff member, which is the other way. So you have 30 people, you cannot just manage all 30 people the exact same way, which is really, really difficult. Which makes our job even harder. So we'll hopefully get some takeaways tonight on that. The next one, anyone seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory? Yes? Okay, so I was shown this probably 10 years ago. I think it was I think it was in college, maybe. I think I had to do a course in college and there's all these theories in the book. I think there's like 4 different leadership theories, but I thought this was the best one. So if you've never seen this one, it's really what Maslow is saying is that as you go up, the people will go up the triangle or the pyramid, but they won't jump to every level until the next level is met. So psychological needs, these people need this, right? They need air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction. That's the minimum amount you need. So when you look at, and a lot of times I compare this to like first world, second world, third world. So I have family in Africa. that work in Africa, and I see lots of people in Africa that are just starting to survive just on this first level. Okay, that's it. Their whole day is based on food, survival, water, shelter, sleep. That's it. That's their whole day is revolved around that. They're not worried about how am I going to pay for my insurance. They're not worried about how I'm paying for my cell phone bill. This is literally their first level they're at. Okay. In Canada, very few people are on this level, right? Even if you talk about people homeless and stuff like that, they typically have this stuff there. There's a lot of government support to handle that. The next one up, people need to feel safe. Okay. And I think as Canadians, as people who live in Ontario, most of them there, they need social security, they need some sort of employment, they need resources, they need health, and they need some sort of property. Again, most of us in this room, I would say, have this one pretty much covered. Most of your staff have this, right? They're employed. They have some personal security typically. They have some resources. There's lots of government resources out there. They typically have their health, physical or mental. The mental part is questionable. Most of us have physical health. And then they maybe rent property. Property is obviously hard to buy right now, but they typically have that. The next one is they need to feel love and belonging. They need friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. This is where I think most of us, there's a big gap here right now. I think what COVID has taught us is that there's a big gap between safety and love and belonging. Most people don't have someone that they feel loved, that they can go to and talk to. That's why I think the mental health is skyrocketing right now, because they just don't feel they have that one person to go and share stuff with. They can be safe with. They can have a true friendship. Like okay. Does everyone have a best friend? Yeah, best friend, someone you can go to. I always say, like, if I ever have a dead body and I need to get rid of it, it's that one person I can call and say, I need you to bring a shovel and not ask any questions. That's a best friend, right? That's the person you need to be able to call and say, like, this is what I need you to do, no questions asked. And then afterwards, go have a beer and not ever talk about it again. Alcohol does not count, okay? The alcohol, no, but that's why I say they have to bring a shovel and help you bury it, that dead body, okay? So the alcohol can help you forget that dead body, but so if we're looking at our staff right now, I come from an amazing family. My mom and dad are like, they've only been married to themselves. Like, I have a great home. My in-laws are amazing. Like, home was a safe place for me. Home was a place I wanted to go. Home was a place I invited my friends to. That's not true with the majority of our staff. You might not know that, but it's true. So during COVID, we can offer this for our staff, okay? And people always tell me, like, how do I get my staff to stay? How do I get my staff not to leave for another 50 cents, $1, $10, whatever it is? If you can start to do some of these things, if you can offer some friendship, intimacy, if you can offer a sense of family, a sense of connection, these are what a lot of our staff are missing right now. They're not going to come up to you and say, hey, I really feel like I need a sense of a family. They're not going to verbalize that. But what they will do, though, is they're going to start to see that in actions. And what I like to see the actions is when I know there's a great culture at a business is when you guys have like a family barbecue or like something after work that's non-paid. And as soon as the thing is like, okay, we're going to have a family barbecue or company barbecue from 4 till 5. At 5 o'clock, I want to look around and see how many people are gone at 5. If most of the people are still there, like 5:30, 6 o'clock, you've started to build a sense of family. Okay? If everyone's leaving at 5 o'clock, we haven't done that. We haven't created that friendship and that family and that sense of connection. Okay? So that's kind of, again, a thermometer I look at when we do some work with companies, just to see that. The love and belonging this is where it gets really, really messy, okay? I'm a guy, you have to state that now most of the time. Love and feelings is not clean and simple. Give me a spreadsheet all day long. This is where being able to be empathetic towards people and just to say, how's it going, to build into that relationship will go a long way. You will be surprised when you take someone to this next level of this hierarchy, people are going to tell you stuff that you wouldn't believe that they would tell you. And I've been the other side of that, right? I've been asking those questions with a consulting business as a manager. How are you doing? And when someone feels really safe with you and they feel that they can trust you, they're going to tell you some dark secrets that you would never think that you would ever tell anyone. But they don't have anyone else in their lives that they can share that with. Okay. So again, but the problem with that is that you're on the other side of that and you're like, I don't know what to do with what you just told me. Right? But that's okay. They're not looking for an answer. They're not looking for you to solve it. For most of us men, as soon as we hear something, we want to solve it. It's not about solving it, just about listening to them. And if they need support, try to find support for them. But if you can do that, that's really, really, really important. So most of us, I would say, are here with our staff. These things are kind of a given now. If you can get to this next level up now, this is where true employee retention is going to come in, and you're going to get a lot out of your staff. Esteem, self-respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, freedom. Again, as people get more confident, as they work up in their role, maybe these are more managers, maybe becomes owners, you start to get some of this stuff. And then the top one is self-actualization. So desire to become the most that one can be. And again, I think there's a lot of companies right now that can do this, but you can't jump, right? So if you say to your staff, hey, what can I help you with to you become a better person? If you haven't built that friendship with them and intimacy with them, they can't get to that level, right? So it's like a ladder. You can't skip a level. The one thing I'm seeing, and I'm not a psychologist right now, but I think honestly, there's another one on top of that. There's almost another peak, where as I guess what do we want to call ourselves? There's just a sense of like entitlement now almost, right? As soon as someone gets to most of these things, then it becomes a lot about money. It's about me, which is unfortunate. This is maybe the downside of this. I don't have any proof of that, but I just start to see that in a lot of people right now. People get financially secure. My wife and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. In my generation, like I'm like 50 years old right now. A bunch of my peers are separating from their spouse. Like they're getting fairly financially stable, and all of a sudden they're separating. I'm like, what is going on? But all of a sudden there's this feeling of like, now that I have everything, I don't really need my partner, right? I have money, I have the position, I have all this type of stuff, so maybe I don't need my partner, or my partner's not doing what they used to do for me. So I think there's maybe this another peak that's coming in society. Maybe I'm staying on a soapbox or something like that, but I think there's a sense of entitlement coming right now for people that are already up there. When we go visit our family in Africa, it's amazing. Like the people that are this level right now are probably some of the happiest people I know. They do have a cell phone, but that's it. They're just so happy. And they look at us, and because we've talked to them about this before, we've talked to them and we're like, you guys have all this stuff, you guys have a house, all that type of stuff. And they look at us as North Americans, they're like, well, you're weak. You need all that stuff to make yourself happy. So they see it as a downfall of our society that we need this stuff. And we're still not happier. That's the problem with this whole thing, right? The more we get, the more we want, right? Which is good because it helps us with that. But it is interesting to see the other parts of the world. So Martin, did you have a question? No, you were just stretching. Questions, comments on this one? Yeah. So again, just kind of look at your business. And again, you are not supposed to, as a manager or a leader, let's say you are the owner operator and there's just a kind of level behind you. It's your role, each one of your staff members, to make sure that are you making the jump between here and here. If you have a middle manager and you're the owner and you have a middle management team, it's the responsibility of you as an owner to coach your middle managers to make sure they're having this relationship. This is how the only way you can scale a business is by doing that. Because if it's on the owner to do that with everyone in the operation, it's never going to happen, right? So you have to be able to show that, and you have to be able to show that with your direct reports. So if you have 3 or 4 direct reports, if you can start to do that, then they'll start to do that naturally with their team. Again, this has nothing to do with landscaping. This is just people, how to deal with people, how to lead and manage people. But it's really, really important for us to do this. And I think, like I said, our ideal employee, like I said, is between those two things right now. We can have a huge impact in society if we can do that well. Next one, leadership traits of a great leader. So practice what we preach, look for the win-win, be picky, keep it simple, reward the right results, and listen and talk straight. So again, the win-win, practice what you preach. This happens way too often, unfortunately. You know, my father used to tell me this, you know, just one of those things where it's just like, you can't, or as a parent, you always learn this as a parent as well. Your kids are always quick to point this out, to be able to point this out to you. Look for the win-win, and I would say win-win-win, so almost a third win. So you see a lot of companies that are like, you know, I want to win as a company, you know, I'm going to get this job, I'm going to win it. I don't really care what maybe the customer has to do or the suppliers or vendors. But what's a win-win-win for everyone, right? Some of the best jobs, the most profitable jobs is when everyone wins, not just the owner. Or sometimes it's the win is the client wants the win, and they're willing to bang, like they're willing to drag you down, they're willing to beat you up, they're willing to make your life miserable because they win based on, I got $100,000 landscape for $80,000 because I beat you up and I saved myself $20,000. That's not a win-win-win for everyone, right? So what's the win-win-win for that? Be picky. I actually had to look this up. This was one of those ones that was in the book. And I was like, be picky. What does be picky mean? But what they're referring to is just be selective about what you're doing, right? So I think in our world, what hill do you want to die on, right? So what battle do you want to fight? What's important? You know, what's important? What do we want to be known for? I just had an opportunity. I was at Steve's this afternoon, and Steve gave me a little tour of his place. And Steve's thing is we're picky. Like his trucks are immaculate, his shop is immaculate, but you pride yourself on that. Your guys show up, and you're picky about that. That's what you're known for, right? So there's a lot of contractors in our world that don't think like that. They're not picky about that, right? But I think it's really, really important. Steve does an amazing job with that. Like, it's awesome. Like, I've never seen Steve's truck not dirty. Like, how do you do it? But it's awesome. So again, be picky. Keep it simple. As leaders and managers, sometimes we want to overcomplicate things. I think I'm a pretty simple person, but sometimes we get in our head, we get a bunch of head trash going, and we complicate things, right? So keep it, the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. Again, in our businesses, we complicate our businesses way too much. Again, maybe too many services, maybe too many levels of management, maybe too many pieces of paper. You know, when things go wrong, we always put some sort of management, put a piece of paper on top of another, and all of a sudden you're looking at it saying, if you want to do anything here, you got to fill out these 5 documents in order to get permission. I've been part of those organizations. They're not fun to work with. You know, there's a reason for that, but it's still, keep it simple, stupid is still the best way to be able to do it. So reward the right results. One of my mentors, Roy, used to say, what you permit, you promote. Okay? The way you permit, you promote, which is really the same type of thing, reward the right results. So we talked about B players. Oh, here, we're gonna make this into B players and A players. Okay, so when we accept that B player maybe not doing, let's give an example, not filling in their timesheets, or showing up 10 minutes late every day, or not cleaning his truck out like he should. What we permit that to happen, maybe because we don't want to have that hard conversation or we don't know what to do. What we're doing is we're permitting that to everyone else to say, this is the new standard by which we're going to hold you accountable to. Okay, so your example of what do we do with that B player that's not doing that type of stuff, you got to get on that quickly. We're going to talk about it in the conflict part, but that's something you have to do right away. Because if you permit it, we're promoting it. Sorry, we're going to promote it to everyone else. We're saying, hey, you can now do this. The rules are not important anymore. Okay, so it's on us not to allow that person, that B player, C player, to allow them to get away with that. You got to nip it in the butt fairly quickly. So be an example of that. Again, reward the right results. Some of the great things about in our industry that we see all the time is some of the worst offenders of policies are some of our most tenured workers. So they seem, as owners, we always let them get away with stuff. Well, they've been here with us for 20 years. Yeah, so they should know better, right? But when we accept that, then we're just saying to the new people, we have 2 levels of acceptance here. Just because that person's been with us for 20 years, he can run the business, but we don't expect you to do that, and that's not fair. That's a culture killer for sure. So again, if you have one of those employees, and we always hear justification for that, well, if that person leaves, or I have to leave that person, then that person's such a unicorn. What are they going to do? I have to replace them with 2 other people. And I'm like, you have to let them go. They either have to toe the line, or They have to be let go. Trust me, when you let that person go, and we see this over and over and over again, when you let that person go, there's going to be so many people thank you. There's going to be so many horror stories that come out that you didn't even know about. And then what will happen is most people around that person are going to step up and do more of that person's job just because they're so happy that that person's gone. The people around them were just people around that person were just slowly backing off and caring less because they're like, if this person doesn't care, then why should I? But I really believe that most people will step up. So anyone had that experience? Let that person go? Yeah. You want to share? Can you share with us? Yeah. Sorry, I forgot to ask. I should prepare. Trevor, I'll give you a heads up next time. I'm gonna.
Yeah, Grant, it was just sort of what you explained there. We had one that was sort of like a cancer in the crew. Things continually slid, and it finally came to a situation where we had to let him go. And the two that were remaining on that crew did the same amount of work that the three of them were doing for 6 months prior, and happier about doing it with just the two of them.
Yeah. Okay, good. Anyone else got a good story they want to share? Specific?
I worked with a lady, that couldn't get along with anybody, but she showed up every day. And she couldn't get along with the crew and was bounced to another crew. And there was still problems there. Many years later, I just thought, well, she's probably picked on or whatever, and I gave her a job. And she did the exact same thing, but worse. But worse, because she thought, oh, well, she's giving me a chance again. But, she's dragging her feet. She's pessimistic. She's complaining. I'm like, I'm sorry. Are you saying that you don't want to do the job? I've given you the opportunity to, I'm like, you can do this. If it gets too much, then you have these two other areas you can focus on. But she's like, but you want me to work alone? I'm like, for an hour, you need to work alone, then I'll be back and help you. And it was frustrating. And so she shows up on the next day and she doesn't have her steel toe boot. She's got a smoothie in hand and she's got this sour look on her face. I'm like, just go. She's like, but I just drove an hour here. I'm like, you're not ready for work and you're 15 minutes late. I'm sorry, leave. And like, it just made me so angry. And at the end, I felt such relief. I'm like, I wasn't the problem. She was the problem, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah. The other mistake we make a lot is when we do get to that person where we're like, they're not getting along, they can't get along with this crew. I think and I've made this mistake way too many times, is then we go and try to make a position for them, hoping that they're going to do better. And not that people shouldn't get a second chance, but I think as a percent, if I actually did a pool of the room, most of the time the person doesn't change, right? They just like, all we've done is held off or pushed down that hard conversation down the road where we should have done it originally. We just didn't want to have that hard conversation, right? So there's lots of times, and we do that as an industry way too many times. So a lot of times we promote people past their capacity too.
But it's not a one-sided thing, right?
Yeah.
There's so many facets and moving parts that sometimes it's not easy to make the decision.
Yeah.
Whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah, it's hard. And that's why people are difficult, right? Life would be so much easier if we didn't have clients and staff, right? We would make tons of money, right? It'd be so much simpler if we just had a piece of equipment and dig a hole and fill it back in again. So.
But without customers, you
Well,
have no job.
Well, we don't, and without employees in our industry, we don't have a job either, right? So, but it is hard. So, okay. So we're, again, reward the right results. Too many of us are rewarding improper results. and not rewarding as like giving them a gift card or anything like that, but we're accepting their behavior, which in turn is rewarding them, saying, I'm getting away with it, which means it's okay, so I can continue to do it. So the next one is listen and talk straight. So this is kind of the KISS method a little bit. We're going to talk about active listening in just a bit, but which is really important. And then just talk straight to people. Again, that's where that conflict, we're going to talk about conflict and having those hard conversations. Too many times I've sat in a room and we've coached someone about having a hard conversation with someone, and then they come out and it's just like they're all over the place, and you're like, where are you going with this conversation? And the person sitting across from them is like, I'm confused, right? When it should have just been, hey, we're going to let you go. This is not working out. Thank you very much. Here's your termination papers. This person's like 20 minutes later, you're like, are we letting them go or giving them promotion? Like, I don't know where this is going. So, and again, it's just nervousness on our part because we don't know what to do. So typically when we're nervous, we talk. So hence why I'm standing up here. Qualities of a great leader are emotional stability. Dominance is a weird one. Again, I had to figure this one out. Enthusiasm, conscientiousness, social boldness, tough-mindedness, self-assurance, and compulsiveness. So some of those terms, again, they're out of the book. So I wouldn't necessarily, I don't like all the words out of the book. So like dominance is probably a word I wouldn't necessarily use. But it was in the book. So I think the whole idea, emotionally stable, is really important. Again, I'm going to give you my example. When Martin came to me and said that I was a seagull and I was coming and shitting it on everyone and flying away, I wasn't emotionally stable. We had a huge uproar in our whole family. There was just stuff going on, and I just wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't thinking straight. And when I don't do that, I don't have great conversations. I'm not thinking well. So it just became that whole thing. And he was able to bring me back and be like, what he was telling me was, you're not emotionally stable right now to make any decisions. So we're going to take you out of that, right? But I wasn't, and it was just normal. So when our lives, personal lives go through, and we all go through it, that's when you just have to have the self-awareness to know that's what's going on. Dominance, I don't like the word dominance, especially as a male staying in front of you, but I think just being assertive, like just being confident in the abilities that you have. People can read through. If you're wishy-washy and not really sure, people see that, right? And then they start second guessing it. But if you're confident, you go in with confidence and be like, this is what the decision needs to be made, and that's it. Understanding that every decision you make, there's going to be 50% of the room that doesn't agree with it, but you still have to come in with some sort of confidence / dominance, which is the word I don't like. But enthusiasm, I think, again, that's part of it. You know what? I always, when I stand up here, you know, for me, typically I'm an introvert. So these type of events kind of drain me, but I have to work up my enthusiasm. This is not how when I want to sit down and coach with you or sit down with my team, I'm not all like, hey, how's it going? All that type of stuff. Like, this is something I have to bring enthusiasm to the room, right? And that's as a leader, as a manager, you need to bring some sort of enthusiasm. Like, hey, let's get going. It's a great day. The sun's out. Like, what a great afternoon. Like, even today, right? Coming here tonight was easy to bring some enthusiasm because the sun's out. But coming here tonight when it's like snowy, gray, I got to work harder to bring enthusiasm in the room. Conscientious, I think it's self-explanatory. Social boldness, not really sure on that one, tell you the truth. Tough-mindedness, this is probably the number one thing most owners are struggling with right now, is that, especially during COVID, since COVID is like, again, I think we've talked about this a couple times, but there's so many, none of us have gone through COVID, right? Those owners who are 20 plus years, the last 4 years of COVID has been up and down, right? Like when it first started, we thought all our business were being shut down. And then like 2 weeks later, then we became essential workers. So everyone's back up. And then we thought we were in this deep recession, and then people started spending money like crazy. And then all of a sudden we realized that we didn't have enough staff, and then we didn't have enough material. So again, the roller coaster comes back down, and it's like, okay, then supply chain starts to come back in. You know, people are still spending money, and then the interest rate goes up, right? And you're like on the way back down again, right? So as an owner right now, you have to be really tough-minded. You have to be able to sit there and say, I don't know what's going on, but I gotta kind of be the stability. So going back to your comment originally about the table, about what do you do as an owner, you need to find a third party you can vent to, okay? Not your staff. You need a mentor, a coach, typically not your significant other. So like typically your significant other is not, some significant others are good, But a lot of times it's just a third party, someone who can see through the trees and be like, listen, you're overreacting, or that you can feel safe to vent to. Okay. There's lots of times where it's just like, I just need to vent. I just need to scream and yell and swear. And at the end of it, I feel better about it. But that person doesn't take personally. And they're like, okay, are you done? I'm like, yes, I'm done. Thank you so much. Like, that's all I needed. Because if not, if I couldn't have that, if I couldn't do that, if I couldn't get that vent out, it was eventually going to come out to the staff. Tell me how you really feel. Yes. And you can't do that to the staff, right? If the staff ask you that, then you're in the wrong relationship, right? There's still a hierarchy of that. So try to find a mentor. This is what I love about Landscape Ontario. There's tons of people that will be a mentor to you. Doesn't cost anything. Just say, like, even tonight, this is why we mixed you guys up tonight, is because we want you to build a relationship. I've had those people in Landscape Ontario in my life. One of those guys was Jay Murray from TLC. I sat on the board with him, and Jay was always like, Grant, whenever you want to come to my office, feel free to come to my office. I think there was 6 times I came to Jay Murray, sat across from him like, I do not want to do this anymore. He's like, Grant, don't worry. I had those feelings just yesterday. I'm like, you did? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. I thought you had it all together. But just someone you can just go to and be vent and just, they've been through it, right? Everyone here, you're going to bring a problem tonight that you may be thinking about or that's bothering you. Someone else in the room has already dealt with this, right? So you don't need to do it alone. So, but it just means you need to step out and ask someone to be able to do it. And that's going to help with your tough-mindedness. Self-assurance is pretty self-explanatory. Compulsiveness, I don't like the word. More assertive. So many of us don't make the decision that we actually need to make. Okay, again, leadership management is making those hard decisions when the decision needs to be made. Typically, I am a gatherer of information before I make a decision, but as soon as I get that enough information, I'm willing to make the decision right now and make the changes right away. So many of our clients just put off and put off. I need more information. So they call it analysis paralysis. So I need some more information before I actually make a decision. So I would say the compulsiveness is that you got to be able to sit there and say, I may not have all the information, but at least I'm going to make a decision. And then based on the information I have, I think this is the right decision. Knowing that maybe 6 months down the road, you're like, well, I didn't have that information. Maybe was that the wrong decision, but at least you got to make it. It's better to make the decision and then look back and go, okay, maybe it wasn't the right decision, but at least I made a decision. And a lot of leaders, managers suffer from analysis paralysis when it comes to that. Future leaders will exhibit high energy, intuitiveness, maturity, team orientation, empathy, and charisma. Excuse me. So high energy, again, if you are introvert and people drain you, you have to be able to put that on in the morning. So to me, I am a morning person. My energy level is higher in the morning than it is at night. So if I'm going to have a staff meeting or I'm going to do a presentation, I'm going to naturally want to do it in the morning when my energy is high. Intuitiveness is, so a lot of people, I think if you're a business owner right now, a lot of business owners or entrepreneurs have this intuitiveness within them. They can just be like, my gut tells me this. I can't necessarily figure out what it is about this, but my gut tells me this. So if you're a business owner or you're a manager, you probably have some of that naturally because that's what's got you up. And again, it's not something you put your finger on, but it's just like, something's not right here, right? So that's intuitiveness and you need that. Empathy, I mentioned empathy before. My empathy is very low naturally, but what I have learned is to show empathy for a lot of things, for a lot of people. Again, understanding that I can show empathy, that people will tell me stuff that I don't necessarily have to have the answer for, but I'm willing to listen to them and I'm willing to show empathy and not judge them and just be able to show that. So again, we go back to that hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy. If you can show that empathy towards people, then you're going to become a better leader. And charisma, again, charisma is one of those things, like I hear charisma, I think Steve Jobs. But again, a lot of great leaders, I think John Maxwell's Good to Great. Who wrote Good to Great? Does anyone know who wrote Good to Great? No, Jim Collins did. Jim Collins wrote Good to Great. Yeah. So in that book, they take companies over like 30 years and what made them great. And charisma, leaders with a lot of charisma were typically companies that did not survive, right? The leader, as soon as the leader stepped away, they usually fell off. So charisma for me is just more of just a standard, like just is just a level of charisma, not this big person that they're this big person like Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is just a big person, right? Everyone wanted to be Steve Jobs and all that type of stuff. But at the end, when Steve Jobs stood down, Apple went down. Now they've kind of come back up again, but so much of Apple was built around Steve Jobs. And I don't think, I just challenge you not to build your company around that, but you still need to be able to show charisma. Those people that sell, like owners who can sell naturally, you know, like I could sell, there's some people that can sell ice to an Eskimo. Those people have charisma, right? They're just naturally, you just want to give them money, you know, when you sit down with them. Those are the type of companies that we have one owner that does a design build firm. And I've been there where he's been like, he'll sell $1 million backyard. And it's really all they say is like, here's $1 million, just do what you think would be best for my backyard. That person has charisma, right? Like they don't even need a drawing or anything. People just trust them. But a lot of the times it comes with charisma. So again, it doesn't mean, so again, you might be looking at this list and going, oh my goodness, I don't have 50% of this stuff, right? Which is okay. So as you go through your journey as a leader or as a manager, it's just sitting there saying some of these things is like, okay, what am I really, really good at? What am I not good at? And can I get better? Or if you have a larger organization, then it's maybe sitting there saying, listen, I'm not the high energy person in the room. I don't necessarily have to be the high energy person in the room, but who can I get that can be the high energy person in the room? Okay, so it doesn't mean you have to be all these things, but can you have an organization with a bunch of this stuff that's in it? Okay. Next slide, and then we're going, oh, you know, we're gonna stop here. So we'll stop for 5-10 minute break. So get another drink, washroom break if you need some fresh air, and then we're gonna talk about conflict, okay? So big stretch. Conflicts. Anyone have any, for the first part of it, on the leadership side, anyone have any comments, concerns, challenges, stump the chump, anything like that before we move? Anyone share anything with us? The Kerr boys, you guys want to share anything? Jason, you got any thoughts? He's got lots of thoughts, yeah, as you're eating? Not to put you on the spot or anything, but. Okay. All right, conflict. They're building their family network. Yeah, I should actually split. Oh, Jason was late. I should have split Jason up. Should have pulled him out, but yeah. Well, we were separating everyone. Okay. So conflict is the #1 reason a lot of these things happen. Not knowing how to deal with conflict is one of the main reasons we see as consultants that businesses are floundering. Okay, so because people just don't want to do it. Again, I told you about my mom and dad. My mom and dad are amazing. They taught me amazing things. I'm so thankful for the person I am today with them. My father never sat me down, or my mother never sat me down and said, if you ever have conflict, here's how you deal with it. Right? So I wish they had, because really the first real conflict I had was with my wife. And again, we're still together after 28 years, 25 years, 26 years this year. Oh, sorry, Marcy. Hopefully she's not watching this. I should remember that. But again, it's not something we teach. So at Nextra, we've done a bunch of this conflict resolution stuff, and we're going to talk about the resources. If you're looking for a book, it's called Crucial Conversations, and I'm going to show you a picture at the end, but that's one book. If you struggle with having conflict, knowing how to have that conversation, putting it off, that book is amazing to be able to do. So, and again, I'll show it to the end. So 3 types of conflict that we can have within an organization. Interpersonal, intergroup, or interorganizational conflict. So interpersonal this is the majority of it. So it's 2 staff on a crew that don't get along. Maybe it's between you and your spouse, or you and a family member. Typically, majority are interpersonal conflicts that we have. The intergroup conflict is like conflict on a crew. Right? So the crew can never seem to get along. It's not necessarily one person. It's just a group of people that can't get along. Again, it doesn't happen as often, but it's still an issue. Or maybe within the design build, maybe the maintenance, so you have 2 divisions. Maybe the maintenance division is really hitting its stride, and they're really getting along, and the construction division is not doing very good, right? So it's intergroup. Interorganizational is a bit for bigger organizations. So if you have like a division manager, this is where we hear a lot about when you start create silos within your organization. We have a maintenance department, enhancement department, sales department. admin department, and they all kind of, at the end of the day, we're all naturally selfish. So we always want the best for our department. And then eventually what happens, you create silos, and those silos don't start working together. So you're always trying to have, how do we do that? But then how do we break those silos down? So that's kind of interorganizational conflict. Again, so if you can nip kind of the interpersonal stuff, then a lot of this other stuff doesn't actually happen, kind of builds off of it. So conflict strategies. So typically, again, these are nor good or bad. So avoidance, accommodation, competition, compromise, or collaboration. So again, kind of start to bottom. The best one is obviously the bottom, the worst one is the top. So avoidance is typically what we go towards. So when I first got married, again, no one taught me how to do conflict. So for me, when my wife and I would have conflict, it was our first little house had a like a kitchen living room that had open, so you could enter from both sides. And I always avoided conflict, and she always took that whole thing, never go to bed angry. And I was always like, if I wake up in the morning, the conflict would go away. So she would actually chase me around the house, and I'd be like, just leave me alone. And she'd be like, no, I want to deal with this conflict right now. And I'd be like, just leave me alone. And we would actually, like, it wasn't physically chasing, but it was almost like that. I was avoiding, she wanted to deal with it. But that's what I knew. That's what my mom and dad showed me, was that. That was my dad. My dad did not like conflict. My mom, and they would go to another room and do it, but I never saw that. But really, I think they would chase each other around the bedroom. You know, and now I just saw it. Marla was chasing me around the kitchen and living room. So accommodation. So this is typically when we just give in. I don't want to have this conflict with you, so I'm just going to give in. I'm just going to accommodate whatever request you have. Even though it's going to probably put me out, it's probably going to create more issues in the end, but I'm just going to accommodate because I just don't want to have that conversation with you. Competition. So this is when the two people won't back down, right? So it's like, if you know your personalities, like DISC personalities, it's those high D or those two alpha personalities that just are like, I'm not giving in. You're not going to give in, then we're just going to keep going until someone gives in, right? And if you get those two personalities, that's great. Typically, the other side of that is accommodation. You have an alpha personality and you have someone that's not, and then that's where the accommodation comes in. Compromise is obviously better. So how can we actually compromise? So we go back to that win-win situation. And then collaboration. So how can we actually work together to solve this conflict? So again, avoidance, not the best. Accommodation a little bit better. Competition, not the best. Compromise is good, but then collaboration is what the ultimate goal is, what we're looking for when it comes to that. So, and again, this is the source of so many of the issues you're dealing with, probably within your own business. So again, when you can sit there and say, look at your current, maybe you all have one person right now. If I say to you, who's one person in your organization that you don't like, or that's those B or C players, you need to have a conversation with them and point out yourself, where are you at, what's your natural conflict default? Anyone want to share what theirs are? Anyone? No? Okay, we'll keep moving then. Anyone online? No? Okay. To manage conflict, a leader must ask a series of questions. So again, this takes emotional intelligence to be able to stop and just think about these things before you go and have this conversation with the person, right? So this, again, if you have a mentor, you have a coach, this is where it's just having, listen, I need to know, I have to have this conversation. What's the prep work do I have to do before I have this conversation? So these are some really good questions that the book talks about. What's important about this conflict? Like, what's at stake, really? If I don't have this conversation, if I don't have this talk with this person, what's at stake? Which is really, really important. Who has the power? So typically, if I'm a manager, I have the power. I got in the position because I want the power, right? You know, but that's not necessarily the best way to look at it. That's who, as managers, we default to, or as a leader, because I'm like, I'm higher on you in an org chart, so I have the power. As soon as you start to do that, that's when there's a power difference there, and that's when the conversations start to go sideways. What's at stake? So again, same type of thing. What's important? If I don't have this conversation to you, what's going to happen? If I need to get rid of that person that's been here, that doesn't follow the rules, all that type of stuff, what's at stake? Well, if I don't get rid of that person, my A players are eventually going to leave. That's what's at stake. That's how important this is, right? Or my clients aren't going to be happy with me, or there's lots of stuff that's at stake. Those are the things that we keep telling ourselves when we're laying in bed at night. If I don't have this conversation, this is what's going to happen. You run through all those scenarios. That's what's at stake. What's the time frame? Again, it doesn't have to happen right away, but there needs to be some sort of time frame on this. Like, I'm going to talk to this person on Friday. Not just leave it and leave it and leave it. Well, next time I see them, next time it's appropriate time. There's never going to be an appropriate time. You'll always find excuses to be able to do it. And then what's the bottom line? What are we going to resolve? What are we going to walk away with from this conversation? And the bottom line could be, you can't work here anymore. I'm sorry, but this is what the bottom line is. As much as you may be able to talk to me or talk around me or show, like, sell me on a good story why I should be able to keep you here or allow you to keep doing this. The bottom line is you have to leave. You cannot work here anymore. And here's what we have to do. I've seen too many people get convinced they went into the conversation and the person that was next to that they were having the conversation with them talked them out of whatever the decision was. Okay. So my wife is very, very good at, like, she can react very quickly to a conversation. That's not my skill set. I have to think about it. I have to kind of, like, there's lots of times where I'm like, that's a good, I want to talk about that, but I need time to think about that. My wife doesn't need that time. She can, her and I can have a discussion, like maybe a little bit heated discussion, and she can just come back and be really, really quick. Right. And I can't do that. It's just not my natural tendency to be able to do that. So it's just like, so I have to say to her, hey, that's a great conversation. I need some time to think about that. But tomorrow morning, this goes with the timeline. Let's talk about it tomorrow morning. So it just helps us when we have conflict in our lives. Hope my wife doesn't watch this, because she's going to be like, you're giving way too many personal examples away. You have a bad. Do I think in my sleep? 100%. For me, my personality is, I will very rarely, like, if you come to me at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I need to make a decision, I'm typically not going to make a decision, but I'll have clarity the next morning about what that decision is, right? But I won't do that. Like, I'm just not that fast when it comes to that stuff. So, but for whatever reason, a good night's sleep for me is just like, I usually, like, I'll lay in bed, but for whatever reason, but I'm clear in the morning. Yeah, like let's meet at 6 a.m. and I'm clear. I'm like, okay, let's get going. Don't ask me at 6 p.m. though. You do, yeah, to get to that point. So my wife, not that. She just drives her up the wall. She'll let's solve it at 6 p.m. And I'm like, I don't want to solve it at 6 p.m. Let's solve it at 6 a.m. Okay, how to manage conflict. So these are just, again, some of the things you can do prior to the conversation. Collect data. And I thought collect data was really weird when I read it, but what they're saying is actually get data. So people will come at you and say, like, you always hear words like always, you never, this is always happening, stuff like that. So go collect data. So if you're sitting there saying, like, you're always late, well, that's not collecting data. What you actually have to do is sit there and say, hey, based on our attendance, the last 30 days, you've been late for 15 of those 30 days. So that's not always, but that's never. More than never, right? So to put data in front of someone that's not emotional, to be able to do that in front of a person is really, really important to do. So again, people, when we're trying to put an argument together, we're not trying to overemphasize something, but that typically what is happening. So if you need to come to a manager or something like that, bring data with you. Hey, here's what I think is happening, right? Here's the data to show based on what I feel. Here's the data that backs what I'm feeling up. Deal with one issue at a time. It is amazing how many times you get in a conflict or a heated argument, and there's way more issues actually coming out than the one you actually came to, right? So a lot of people keep stuff inside. They get it, what's the word I'm looking for? Bottled up, yes. And then when you allow them to let that bottle go, you cork it, all of a sudden all these other things come out, and you're like, didn't know that was an issue, didn't know that was an issue, didn't know that was an issue. And then all of a sudden you're trying to deal with 5 issues at a time. That as a manager, you have no idea that were even happening, right? So to be able to sit there and say, that's a really good point, but that's not what this conversation is about. Let's meet 2 days to talk about that certain point, right? But emotions become high during conflict. And then you just, all of a sudden it comes out. And then as a manager, you're caught off guard. So you're trying to solve all these things as they come out. But it takes, again, emotional intelligence to be able to take one issue at a time and to be able to keep that going. Ask open-ended questions. So like, how does that make you feel? What do you think about this? You know, all those open-ended questions that you can Google open-ended questions, and it'll give you a list of them. One of my predecessors always had those open-ended questions on his desk. He would print them off and he would just kind of go through them, right? So just because again, when you can't think really quickly, those are really good questions to be able to look at and do. Consider timing. So timing, I think, is really, really important. I think most of us as an industry do this really good job. I always get the question when we coach someone on when to let someone go. They always ask me, when should we let this person go? Do we do it on a Monday morning before the crew comes in? Do we do it Friday afternoon? Do we do it at lunch? Like, there's no perfect timing. Like, so you just really just have to sit there and say, pick a time. You know, obviously don't do it in front of the whole crew, but pull someone aside. So there's no good timing for it. But pick a good time that, especially for you as a manager. You know, again, for me, I would probably not fire people at the end of the day because that's just not my best time. So I would probably talk to someone first thing in the morning because that's when I'm most patient, I'm most apt to listen properly, and I'm most prepared for that conversation. So make sure it's a win-win. Win-win is an objective term, I would say. So to me, if I'm going to fire someone, to me, that's a win. They may not see it as a win right now, but I've seen enough people, I've let enough people go that eventually, if those people are self-aware, they'll realize, they'll eventually may come back to you and be like, you know what, you fired me, and that was probably the best thing you could ever done for me, right? You actually showed me that I was on a task. You know, so when Martin came to me and said that I was, you know, that I was a seagull, I was shitting all everyone and flying away, the win-win was, I didn't feel like I wanted that instant, but I went back to him like, it was a win because I did realize that this is the actions I was having. So in the end of it, our organization did win because he was able to do that for me. Avoid quick solutions. And again, as managers, I would say this is a nervous part of our role as a manager, is just to solve something quick. And typically we're trying to solve something quick so we don't have to talk about it anymore. It's like ripping the Band-Aid off. You're like, fine, just do it. And we compromise and we just don't talk about it, rather than actually taking the conversation and actually like, let's work through it. Like, it doesn't have to get done like right away. That would my tendency just be like, let's make a decision, move on, so we don't have to have this awkward conversation. But take your time, don't make it quickly. It could be, again, just if you're gonna put that decision off, make sure you come with a timeline. Okay, so let's not make that decision today, but let's talk tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, and we'll make that decision then. Don't leave it open-ended, because that's not fair to the other person that's coming, right? So if you need time, or you need to figure out when we're gonna make that decision, it's a part of you as leadership and management to put a time frame on that when you're gonna come back. Discuss common interests. Reject the desire to be right. So again, common interest is just, is this good for the company, right? If hopefully these people are coming to like their desire for them to coming to you is to make the business better, right? Like, here's an issue with our crew, just assume that they're doing it with the right motives, okay? But when we hear conflict and we hear someone coming at us personally, we think they're doing a personal attack. And most people, it's not, right? They are trying to come to you to create a resolution, to try to make whatever the situation is better. So what are the common interests there? Reject the desire to be right. This is, again, as humans, this is a natural tendency. You're wrong. I don't act like that. I'm sorry, but I'm right. You're wrong. You're not seeing it from my point of view. So again, be able to do that and then negotiate it out. So again, somewhere typically when I hear as a consultant, we do a lot of interaction with the staff. So if we come into your business for the first time, we would do what we call a discovery day. So it's a one deep dive into your business. And then when we originally started doing this, we only got the owner's perspective. So we'd ask them about their HR program, health and safety. We'd ask them all these questions. And a lot of times it was really rosy. And then I was like, you know what? We actually need to ask the staff this question. And then the staff a lot of times would give us a completely different view of what's actually going on in the business, right? So to actually sit there and say, okay, what's the middle on this type of thing? So what's the negotiation? Sit there and say, here's where you are, here's where I am, what's in the middle? So be able to do that. Yep. Oh, be hard. Oh, yeah, be hard on the problem and soft on people. So that's a good one where it's like, so what's a good example of that one? Yep.
I heard a great one of my things.
Can you grab the mic there? Sorry, it's sitting right in front of you.
Hello. I heard a great one. It was figure out How, not who.
How, not who.
So rather than depicting someone's done something wrong, rather just deal with the issue itself and say, what is wrong with the issue? What has been done wrong
Yeah.
versus who did it,
Who did it? Yeah.
right? So you're taking all that off of there and like off the personal attack.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to deal with the issue and make it better.
Yeah. Okay. Martin, what's another example of this one? I'm like brain fart right now, like hard on the policy. Like go back to a policy, right? Like, hey, like you're being late, right? Late's a good one, right? Like it's not a personal attack on the person. It's like, no, our policy is you need to be here 10 minutes before startup. You need to be hard on that. Like you're breaking a policy, right? Is there something going on? You can ask all those open-ended questions like, why are you always late or all that type of stuff. But it's like, I'm talking to you about the policy that we have. You've signed this document. You say you're going to be here. You know, the respect is if you're going to be late, you need to text someone, right? Like we understand late's like people sleep in. We understand that, but your responsibility is you need to text someone, not just show up and unannounced. Stuff like that. You got to be hard on the poll on that type of stuff. So. Okay, communication. Anything else on conflict? Helpful tips? Again, Crucial Conversations is an amazing book. Probably one of the best books I've read on this. Again, it's not natural for most of us to deal with conflict, but that book is amazing. It is really, really good. Martin did a webinar series, I think last year with it, and we've used it for a bunch of our clients for that. So, okay, next topic is communication. Communication is the basis of all human interaction. To be an effective leader, you must be able to communicate information and convey the meaning of that information to your employees. So the best example of this that we learned as a kid is the game of broken telephone. Everyone sits in a circle. The first person gets told a sentence, and then the next person goes around, and by the time it gets around to the fifth person, there's absolutely no relevance or any. It just doesn't even it's not even close to what the original person said, right? So, and that's just lack of communication, how it gets broken. And again, that happens in our businesses. So as your business scales, as your business becomes more complex, communication is even more and more important. And again, when there's lack of communication, you're going to hear about it because this is when things go sideways all the time. And a lot of conflict comes around miscommunication, right? I heard this or I thought about this, and you're like, actually, no, that wasn't what was communicated, but you heard it third party or you heard it through someone else. So we can never communicate enough when it comes to our businesses. So skills for effective communication as a leader. Be complete and specific. Personalize your message. Use multiple channels. Use simple language. Mass message with actions. Know your subject. Be honest. Be dynamic. Understand nonverbal messages. Ask for summarizing feedback. Understand underlying assumptions. And ask good questions. So be complete and specific. If speaking in front of a group, if you are not comfortable speaking in front of a group, and I've seen this in the past where an owner isn't necessarily a good public speaker, or you struggle with that, just prepare. Like it's okay to write notes down and be like, even if it's just point form, like here's like, I've seen some owners stand in front of like a tailgate talk and just struggle and not actually get the points across. It's okay to make some notes and be like, here's the 5 topics I want to talk about today, and write those 5 things down. Personalize your message. Again, people love story, right? I've given you a bunch of examples from my life, how I've been in management, how my relationship with my wife is, examples that I've been. People love if you could personalize the message. People love a good story. There's nothing worse than someone saying, here's what you have to do, but then they've never showed empathy, or they've never showed like, that person's perfect. Obviously, you've never done this before. You've never had conflict with your spouse. And they have, but just personalize it and use some personal examples. Use multiple channels. So again, you go back to how people learn. So there's 4 different ways people learn. So people learn auditory. So it's like, hey, I'm just going to tell you this. And again, this is kind of what we're doing tonight. So a lot of people don't need to see the slides, but a lot of people do need to see the slides. Some people need to see it as writing. Other people need to see it written down so that they'll have a workbook because they can make notes. My wife makes notes all the time, right? So she would actually if she was here tonight, she would actually probably ask me for the presentation in advance. She would write it all out and then she would make notes, right? Because that's just how she is. She's amazing. I just don't have the time for that. So, but that's how she learns, is she writes it out. So there's all kinds of ways you need to do it. So if you're just an auditory, if you're really good at just hearing something and picking it up, That doesn't mean everyone that you're speaking to learns that way, right? So you have to be able to, and that goes back, that's what I was saying, the different channels. So you might have to write it out. You might have to print it out. You might have to put it in an email. You might have to talk about it. Whatever it is, you need to use multiple channels to get your point across. Use simple language. We've talked about that before. Keep it simple, stupid. Match the message with actions. Again, we talked a little bit of that earlier. It's just, again, you need to be the example of that. No one likes a hypocrite. Know your subject is really important. Again, if you don't know the subject, then go do a little bit of research, right? Be a bit more confident on it as best you can. The more confident you are about the topic, the more confident you are in the presentation. Be honest about it. Again, people love honesty. Again, that go back to that Maslow hierarchy. If you can be honest with people, people will start to be honest with you. If you're not honest with people, you're never going to expect them to be open up and be honest with you. So it's really important. Be dynamic. We've talked about that. Understand nonverbal messages. Who was at the award ceremony for LO this year? Anyone? None of you are at the award ceremony? Oh my goodness, you missed an awesome nonverbal. So there was a lady, she was some sort of politician, and she was supposed to be at the event and she couldn't make it. So she did a recorded message at the event, and she went way too long, and she got about her presentation. Well, they actually cut her off because it was so bad. She got about 5 minutes into her presentation, and then the whole room, like, I don't know how many people, there was 200-300 people in the room. The whole room, everyone started chatting, and then louder and then louder and louder. And because she wasn't live, she lost the whole group within 2 minutes of her presentation. And she was just babbling on. But because it wasn't live and it was recorded, she had no idea. So thank goodness, it was amazing. The sound guy, he had just got, he's like, oh, technical difficulty, sorry, we lost her. And then as soon as that came across, everyone started clapping because everyone was like, this is so awkward. But she didn't have any verbal cues to know that she had completely lost the crowd. I think she would have lost the crowd even if she was live because she was so irrelevant for what she was talking about. But it was a great example of that. Ask for a summary or feedback. We're going to talk about this in active listening. But just say, please repeat what you heard. Okay, we used to do that with our kids all the time. And now we do it with staff and people do it with me. But just again, a lot of times, and I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna say that other comment for there, but just active listening. Can you summarize what we talked about? Understanding underlying assumptions. So again, I understand that I have assumptions when I come into a conversation or how I look at something, but that other person you're talking to might not have that same assumptions, right? So just have to think about that and go, what assumptions am I bringing to this conversation or to the discussion that we're having? And then ask open-ended questions again, which is really, really good. I think overall, you can never ask enough open-ended questions. Ask questions for clarity, okay? So what I'm hearing is, please explain that again to me. Some of those things like that, then trying to get a response, active listening is more important, and asking good questions is more important than waiting, like trying to figure out a response. Active listening, correct. This is what it is. Show empathy, make eye contact, avoid outside distractions, do not interrupt, ask clarifying questions, paraphrase, confront, person. Can you just remove that? I think it's person, but personal biases. Okay, thank you. So this was a good one. So the little meme says, I got the test results back from your ear doctor. You're not hearing impaired, you're just listening impaired. Okay, so selectively here, yes. Marla put this on my desk. I'm like, am I saying something? So show empathy. Again, we talked about empathy early on, that's a trend through it. Again, just be able to listen and talk to them. Make eye contact is really, really important. Actually, the one trick, I'm gonna actually give you something different. The one thing I really like about, and I heard this probably a couple months ago, especially in our industry, if you have to have a hard conversation with someone in your organization, especially a crew leader or someone in the field, actually bring them in the truck with you and go grab a coffee. Okay? Because what happens is that when you have that conversation, you don't actually have to have eye contact with the person, right? So especially if you're not confident in your ability to have this conversation, you're looking at the road, the other person can kind of look out. The other thing about that is there's a time element to it. Okay, a lot of us don't know how to land the plane or finish off a conversation. But if you're like, hey, can we just go for a drive? We're just going to go to this site or go for a coffee or whatever, something. What'll happen is that as soon as you get to that site, that's a natural tendency to be like, we're going to end the conversation here. I've kind of said what I need to say. Maybe it goes on a little bit longer, but there's a destination, there's an end in sight. Because if you sit around a table, you're like, okay, who's going to get up now? Right? It's that awkwardness of like, am I done? Are you done? Where it's like, we're at Tim's or we're like out of the site, let's get out and do it. So eye contact is still important, especially for the person that's the manager. But this is a quick trick. If you need to have that conversation with one of your crew members, put them in the truck, take them for a drive, figure out like, hey, it's going to be 10, 15 minutes, find a spot that's 10, 15 minutes down the road, jump in, have a conversation with them, and just makes them feel a little bit more at ease rather than sitting them around a boardroom table. There's nothing worse than sitting across. We've all sat across from HR at a boardroom table and you're like, there's usually two people on the one side of the table and you're on the other. Not that's ever happened to me at all, but it has happened to me. But you just don't feel like there's just, yeah, it's just something awkward about it. Don't interrupt. We've all been on the other side of a conversation where you're actually saying something to someone else and you can already see this person coming out with the answer before you're even done speaking. So they're already figuring out how they're going to rebuttal what you're saying. Right? And that's the worst thing you can do. Okay. So again, if you're asking more open-ended questions, you're not trying to come up with that solution. That's the worst thing you can do in that relationship with conflict is rebuttal right away before the person's even done. Okay. Again, naturally, we're going to do that to defend ourselves. But if you've ever have a manager or someone that's done that to you, it's deflating. At that point, you're just like, why am I even here? Right? You're just like, then you're going to do some of those other things. You're just going to give up. You're just going to say, forget it. I don't want to be here anymore. But it's for a lot of people, that's a natural tendency to just come out with a rebuttal before they've done listening. Before that, paraphrase, again, what I'm hearing is, can you explain this to me? What I think I'm hearing you say is this, all that type of stuff. Again, that's just active listening. And then confront personal biases, just saying, hey, based on what I understand, based on what I know, here's what I'm thinking. They may say, no, that's not at all what it was. That's not all the situation. You're like, okay, perfect. Again, open-ended questions to help with that. So active listening is really, really important. Again, I think active listening is just something where this is a skill that can be learned. It's not natural for most of us to do, but I think it's really, really important. And when you can do this well, and again, this takes some planning and some preparation to do it, the conflict will become less and less hard when you go do this type of thing. So other comments on active listening? Great thing to do as a parent or as a spouse with your significant other as well. My wife has taught me so many of these lessons. I don't even want to admit how many I've learned from her. So, okay. Effective delegation. So again, we do, as a manager, owner, you delegate all the time, or you should be delegating. So again, not a lot of us do delegation well. We didn't necessarily learn this really, really well. So we're going to talk about this. Clarify the assignment. If you're too busy running around, like putting out fires and not paying attention, not getting all your paperwork straight, which we're awful as an industry doing this as middle managers, a lot of the assignments we're giving are not clear. We think they're clear. We thought we've verbalized that well, but it's really not. And then when the assignment doesn't go well and we go to blame the other person, typically it's, again, the issue is us, not typically the person, 9 times out of 10. So you have to be very clear. Again, learning styles. If someone is a verbal learner, then you can give them verbal communications. If they're auditory, you can do that. Sorry, the same thing. If they're written, most of us, I would say, if you can write out the description, like those people like use LMN, those LMN planners are amazing because it shows all the details of it, all that type of stuff. Just to walk up to a guy, put him on site and say, you have this much hours, this much material, this, and verbally give them that, they're never going to remember that. But if you can leave them with a piece of paper, that helps out a lot. So again, does that person have the necessary skills? Most of us are people pleasers. So when you say to someone, do you understand what I'm saying? They're going to say yes, naturally, right? Because they don't want to disappoint you. They're like, maybe this is the first time they mail run a crew. And they're like, yeah, I totally understand. Thanks, boss. Appreciate it. Like, they're all excited about it. But then they might not understand, right? So again, ask some clarifying questions. Can you regurgitate what you're doing? Show me what you've done. Check in with them. Like maybe it's just like check in with them. Like if you're thinking, I'm not going to come back till 3 o'clock today, call them at 10, call them at 12, call them at 1, see how they're doing, right? So just helping them. Do they have the skills to do that? Let others know that delegation has occurred. So again, if you're going to delegate something to someone, say, hey, Jim's running this job today. Make sure you tell the rest of the crews that Jim's in charge. We do that a lot. We don't want to necessarily have conflict with other team members. So we're just like, hey, you're in charge today, right? Make it clear that who's in charge, who's going to own it. Establish feedback mechanisms. So again, if you need to do a call, do an after site visit, whatever it is, allow for feedback. Again, we typically don't, we're okay to get feedback. We just don't set time in our daily time and schedule for people to come to us. So if you're always saying, man, I'm so busy, or my calendar doesn't allow it, or you run to site and you're like answering your phone, all that type of stuff, what that is telling the people around you is you don't have time to hear what they have to say, and you're missing an opportunity for them to get feedback. So if you go to site, make sure you leave your phone in the truck, or turn your phone on silent, or just give that person like you're like, I'm here for you. Like, what do you need from me? Not like, what do you need from me? Oh, sorry, I just got to take this call, right? It's just like, again, we're so busy sometimes that we have to do that. But if you can honestly just sit there and say, okay, what do you need from me? I've blocked everything else out. I'm here for you. That's going to help you do that. Again, we all as managers want feedback, but we don't necessarily always give the person that wants to give the feedback the opportunity to do that, because we're giving nonverbal skills to show them that. Setting goals. Who had talked about setting goals? I think you had talked about setting goals, right? One of your people at the table had asked about setting goals. Yeah, so you had talked about setting goals. So to me, SMART goals, this is the easiest one. I'm sure most of you have a certain SMART goal. Human nature is we want to set a goal and then we kind of falls off, right? Like, you know, New Year's resolutions are notorious for this. So SMART goals really are, every goal that you want to have needs to be one of these things. So it has to be very specific, right? So what do we want to do? So if I want to set a goal of, I want to lose 20 pounds, perfect, I want to lose 20 pounds, right? But it's specific. What is it that I want to do? Is it measurable? Sure, it's measurable. I can get on the scale, but I need to start at what my current weight is, and then my goal is the current weight less 20 pounds, right? So it actually is measurable. Is it achievable? Well, I think I can lose 20 pounds, yes. But if I say to myself, I want to lose 120 pounds, probably not a good thing for my personal health to lose 120 pounds, right? So it's really not achievable, or I probably shouldn't go towards losing 120 pounds. But 20 pounds for me is achievable. So I can succeed in that one. Is it realistic? So is it a realistic timeline? I want to lose 20 pounds. Today is Thursday, right? No, Wednesday today? What's today? Wednesday? I want to lose 20 pounds before Sunday. Okay, probably not realistic. Okay, maybe. I'm sure there's a diet that'll help me with that. I'm sure there's a solution to that, but it's not realistic that I'm going to lose 20 pounds between now and Sunday. Okay, so that's not a good SMART goal. And is it timely? Same type of thing. Is there a time with it? So, so again, setting up some structure within your business. We teach a traction program, which is like a EOS system, which is an entrepreneur system where we actually make 1-year goals. And then with those 1-year goals, we come back and we hold you accountable. We break those 1-year goals into every quarter. And then within that every quarter, you look at those goals every week, right? So it's not like we've all done those 1-year plans. We're like, this is what we're going to do this year. And we stick it on the shelf and we never look at it again. So setting up some sort of system that you can set it within your organization to be constantly going through these SMART goals, right? So yeah, if you want to put a goal together, just think about SMART. And then if a lot of times that'll cover 2 or 3, very rarely will it be all 5. So you'll have way more success if you can answer all those 5 questions towards that. Comments on that one? That answer your question about goal setting? And I think the second half is how do you hold owners accountable to that, right? Right? And again, to me, owners are the worst for this because there's no accountability. So that's why having someone come in as a third party or someone that you're going to give that accountable to hold you accountable for that. A lot of times that third party will actually challenge you on some of that stuff too, right? They'll be like, I know you want to do all that, but is that realistic, right? I think most of us owners are like, oh, it won't take us that long, right? We want to implement a new CRM system. Well, we can do that in a couple of days. And you're like, no. Like, I've seen enough of this. This is going to take you 3 months to do that. So not realistic. So effective meetings. Again, most people hate meetings. But I do love a good, well-led meeting. So this should be something that as a leadership team or as a management team, you should be having one good meeting a week. So before the meeting, always ask yourself, do you need to be in this meeting? There's some people that just invite themselves to meetings. They just want to be part of it. They just want to know what's going on. But they don't necessarily need to be part of it. Or some people get invited to a meeting that they don't need to be there. So is everyone invited to the meeting need to be there or have to be there? Is really important to do that. Start with the end in mind. Determine what the agenda is in advance. Determine again who is the attendees. Garner support for whatever you're talking about. During the meeting, you need to start and end on time. We are awful for this as an industry, okay? So we're always like, for us, like meetings, like if you're, especially operations, if you're gonna have an operations meeting, have it first thing in the morning, like the guys are gone, and then have the meeting. Because if you think that you're gonna go out in the field and do some stuff and come back for 3 o'clock, that's not a smart goal. It's problem at time. The world's gonna fall apart. Always fires seem to happen after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you're going to do some meetings, do it first thing in the morning where everyone's still at the office. You're just going to have more success with it, but you have to start and end on time. So like if you have an hour meeting, you need to start it then and you need to end it then. You just can't keep going over and over again. And that's typically just not a good facilitator. Take charge of the time, ban technology. So make sure you turn off your phones, avoid groupthink. So groupthink to me is, what does everyone think about this? And that's just a killer of a time. That's just opening up to be like, we have 3 more hours to, that's death by committee almost. So maybe it's an update or FYI, or can 2 or 3 of us talk about this, but the whole group typically doesn't need to be part of that conversation, or maybe it's another meeting. Park relevant issues. So if it's something, again, someone brings something up and you're just like, you know what, this is not the time and place for this meeting. Let's do it this time. But a lot of times like, well, everyone's here together. I just want to get this off my chest, right? But that's not a good meeting. Take notes. Someone does need to take notes, which is accountability. Confirm your next steps. After the meeting, do a follow-up. As far as like we're concerned, we love doing like, we'll actually, when we meet with the client, we'll send the agenda, we'll take notes of the agenda, we'll send the agenda or the minutes out afterwards. And that just creates accountability. So Grant was going to do this today. The owner was going to do this. You know, here's the 5 things that we all have to do. When we meet next week, we all know what our responsibilities are. And again, it creates accountability. So again, meetings, a not well-run meeting is really, really painful. But again, if you have a well-run meeting, it can really be effective. Change management, change the active process of results of changing as alteration, transformation, or situational. Change in itself is neither a negative or positive. But just generally overall, people hate change. So again, COVID has taught us that everything can change during COVID. How we used to run our business before can be run differently today. But just generally, everyone hates change, and there's reasons why people hate change. I found this change curve on the internet. This wasn't in the book, but you can kind of see this type of thing. So if you just do this change curve. So typically when you bring someone, change is a process. The longer time frame you have to help people with change, the better results you're going to have. The shorter the time frame, the more resistance you're going to get. So people are typically shocked by the event or what happened. They're going to go in some sort of denial. Then they're going to turn frustrated with it. And then they're going to turn into some sort of depression or a mood change with it. And then you're going to have to experiment with that change, right? And then you're going to have to make some sort of decision. And then you're going to have to integrate whatever that change is. So again, working through people's emotions, right, which are not fun. If you say to someone today, hey, Monday morning, this is the change I want to make, and we're going to start this change tomorrow morning. People have to go through this whole cycle within 24 hours, right? So if you look at that and go, that's just not fair to most people. So be able to kind of, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think about this? Can you give me some interaction? Understanding that we all need to go through this change over a long period of time. And again, as owners, some of us as owners have been thinking about this change for a long time. We just failed to communicate that until we finally made a decision. And that's I typically don't come up with an idea until I've thought about all the scenarios. But then what happens is I leave my team behind when I don't do that. I need to bring them along this path when I do this, when I do some change. Feelings about it. So positive and negative. So some people are going to be on both, one or the other. I love change. I'm excited about it. I see the positivity of it, but some people can be very frustrated by it. Some people love the change because it's a challenge, but others are fear of the unknown. Some people love the growth opportunity. Some people are pessimistic. It'll never work out. Some people are like, hey, this is great new skills I get to learn. A lot of people are fear of failure, that they won't work out. People are like, I love this. It's going to help my job enrichment. Some people look at it and be like, this is just more work that I'm already getting paid. I'm not getting paid anymore for. Some people like the diversity. Some people don't like the change in routine. Some people like the increased job security. Some people see it as less job security. Some people think that there's more involvement in it. And then the other people may think it's poor communication. So again, typically I look at this and go, this side of the room is the glass half full. This side of the room is glass half empty, right? So again, not right or wrong, but you just have to understand as a manager and a leader, you have to manage both of those ways of thinking. And again, the more time you can give to this, the better off you'll be. Change is a process. Explain the why first. So Simon Sinek, Why. If you've never read that book, it's a really good book to understand why is important. You can never explain the why enough. If people buy into the why, gain support and confidence from others. Again, that's sharing some of that information with them. You got to listen and collaborate effectively. So get feedback from it. Take accountability. Provide constructive feedback. Build relationships. Inspire and motivate change. Right? You have to be positive about it. You have to inspire the group. You have to be able to, especially the people on the glass half empty side, right? You need to be more inspiring to them. The people on the glass half full side, they don't need to be inspired. They've already bought into it, right? So again, you're looking at that. Communicate effectively. Again, keep it simple. Provide clear directions. Model the way for the team and create opportunities for small wins along the way. Again, generally, most people don't like change. We are typically routine. You're going to see it within our organization. The people that are in your maintenance crews do not like change. They want the same. They want to know Monday morning, I'm coming in, I'm cutting these 4 sites. Tuesday, I'm coming in, I'm cutting these 4 sites. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm coming in. Most of you people in your landscape construction division or your enhancements divisions, they love change. They don't want to be on site for more than a week. They want constantly change. They want to be challenged. You stick a landscape construction person on a maintenance crew, by Tuesday, they're like, you expect me to do this for the next 32 weeks? Just shoot me, right? But the maintenance person, your maintenance crew leader is like, they'll come in and they'll be like, what are we doing today? You're like, I don't know, we're going to go build this pergola, let's say. They're like, oh, okay, well, what are we doing tomorrow? Well, I don't know, see how far we get in the pergola. They don't like that, right? So you can see a definite change by what the roles that this person has. On your maintenance division, most people, those don't like change. The people in construction. So if you're making a major change within your organization, the landscape construction people are like, yes, let's go. The maintenance people are the ones you need to spend way more time with. Okay, it's just naturally people are drawn towards that. Accountants, if like by trades, people, same type of thing. Accountants love structure. They don't like change. They want spreadsheets, right? They want something predictable. That'd be the worst thing for me, is to get me on a maintenance crew. I would be the worst person ever. SWOT analysis, they talk about this in the book. So if you've never done this exercise, this is a great exercise, especially this time of year. So if you're looking at, pivoting, or should we offer another services, do this exercise. So what's our strengths? What's our weaknesses? What's the opportunities we have? What's our threats? So again, you can look at it and go, what's our internal strengths and weaknesses? What's our external opportunities and threats? And yeah, if you just do SWOT, Google it, there's lots of opportunities to do that type of thing. So move the little, yeah. If you're looking for adding a service, this is really good. So like if you're thinking, I want to do this service now, I want to diversify, do this exercise. If you can do this exercise, you can have 3 or 4 points for each one. It's going to make it very clear if you should do this service or not a lot of times, right? Resources for you. Okay, so some of these I've already talked about. So Working Genius, this is a book that we really like. It's just something new. You can take an online survey of it, but it gives you the ability to understand where people are coming from and how they're going to react to certain situations and what's their strengths and weaknesses within their role. So there's an online survey you can do with that. We've done that with our team. It's really, really helpful. John Maxwell, anything written by John Maxwell, John Maxwell is an amazing leadership coach or leadership writer. So anything that he reads is amazing. Really easy to use, lots of good story within it. It's really good. Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last. Again, anything with Simon Sinek is great for leadership. Start with Why. So if you're going to pick 2 books, start with Why and Crucial Conversations. Those would be the 2 books I would recommend you start with. If you're not a reader, Audible has them, and Audible is amazing. And then Speed of Trust, when we talk about trust. And then Peter Van Stralen, who is the Grounds Guys. He originally started the Grounds Guys. He wrote a book about care leadership, and very, very practical book. Great insights, kind of timeless to it. If you've never heard Peter talk before, he did a bunch of LO stuff a couple years ago. He did a keynote. But if you're looking for real good examples for our industry on how to care for your staff, Peter's book is really, really good too. So, and then that's it. Okay, so again, homework. Okay, so when you walk away, what do you think we do well as a company? What areas do we need to improve? What should we implement next 30, 60, 90 days to improve our leadership? How does spending time and resources on this area improve the current business we have? So who's willing to share 1 or 2 takeaways? 1 takeaway. Who's willing to share 1 takeaway for tonight that we can hold you accountable for as a group? Trevor, you got the mic? Who wants to start us off? 1 thing. Yep.
I really liked your comment. What you permit, you promote.
You permit, you promote.
And I think that's huge in regards to every little day-to-day situation with your employees. Because everybody's going to watch. And
I use that phrase a lot. Sorry, Roy Hummel from Geldman Landscape. He taught me that one. And man alive, as soon as I heard that, I've used that. That's probably my 1 phrase I've used so much in my whole life now. It's kind of a motto I live by. So anyone else want to share 1 thing? Yep.
Just wanted to take away with regards to leadership and kind of management and building the strength of our team. I think strong communication is huge, and being able to communicate with those teams in the evening so that the next day of work they know what is expected the next day. So it's something that I've been working on, kind of calling it like a 3 p.m. snapshot, where I want the crew that's currently working to give me like what's going on in the job, what do they need next, things like that.
Yep.
And then I would then follow up with a snapshot of where they would be the next day, what to look for, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So I
that's
think
good.
that'll help.
Yeah. Most people do want to know the night before what they're doing the next day. Most people don't want to come in and be like, okay, what's going on today, right? So I think that's an effective communication for sure. So that 4 o'clock 4 by LMN, they came up with that a couple years ago. That's some good questions there. But that's pretty much what it is. It's just a 4 o'clock check-in. How are you doing? It creates some accountability. What did you get done today? What are you going to do tomorrow? But good. Yeah, that's excellent. So, yep. Anyone from this table over here?
I would say that getting our employees to the love and belonging, like really trying to foster relationships to build that family.
Yeah.
And let them know that we care about them.
Mm-hmm. The Maslow's thing, right? I think that was the second slide I had. Man, I lost slides tonight. What the heck? Oh, there it is. Right there, right? You want to get to that next level. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, anyone else before we let everyone go? No? Okay. If you need any help with this, I'm here. Martin's here for you. If you need any advice, anything like that, please let us know. I hope the new format tonight helped. So I hope you got to know some people at the table that you might not have gotten to know tonight. And thank you so much for your feedback. Thanks for your time. And we will see you next month. And we're going to do contract law or something like that. I can't remember the topic, but we're going to do that next month, but it'll be on the website. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Have a great night. And yeah, we appreciate the time.